Welcome back. I'm going to start with a couple housekeeping things. First is that I am going to add to at least some of these videos follow-up videos that summarize the chapter and the main points and some commentary about it. So the way this will be structured is that I'll give a reading of the actual chapter or part of the chapter, and then I'll have a separate video where I'll go into the summary, just to keep it tractable and not too long. The other thing is I wanted to just review the purpose of reading this book, because reading the book is not for the book itself, but it's part of an exploration of the divine masculine that I see as a step toward building a more fulfilling and appropriate relationship with the divine feminine. As I said in the last video, there's a lot of information that's being shared lately about the divine feminine, not so much about the divine masculine. I've seen some things out on the internet and on YouTube about twin flames, but I'm much more interested in the archetypal definition of the masculine psyche and what some of the instinctual ways that men operate are and how they're being manifested both in our present environment and then also in wisdom literature of history. So as we go through this, we might take some side roads and get into some stories, like some myths, maybe like the myth of King Minos or King Midas, and other myths of St. George and the Dragon. Who knows? Different aspects different myths that might illustrate different aspects of what we're learning in this book. So in this particular video, I'm going to concentrate on Chapter 1, The Crisis in Masculine Ritual Process, in the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, written by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. We hear it said of some man that he just can't get himself together. What this means on a deep level is that so-and-so is not experiencing and cannot experience his deep, cohesive structures. He is fragmented. Various parts of his personality are split off from each other and leading fairly independent and often chaotic lives. A man who cannot get it together is a man who has probably not had the opportunity to undergo ritual initiation into the deep structures of manhood. He remains a boy, not because he wants to, but because no one has shown him the way to transform his boy energies into man energies. No one has led him into direct and healing experiences of the inner world of the masculine potentials. When we visit the caves of our distant Cro-Magnon ancestors in France and descend into the dark of those otherworldly and innerworldly sanctuaries and light our lamps, we jump back in startled awe and wonder at the mysterious hidden wellsprings of masculine might we see depicted there. We feel something deep within us. Here in silent song, the magic animals, bison, antelope, and mammoth, leap and thunder in pristine beauty and force across the high vaulted ceilings the undulating walls, moving purposefully into the shadows of the folds of the rock, then springing at us again in the light of our lamps. And here, painted with them, are the handprints of men, of the artist hunters, the ancient warriors and providers who met here and performed their primeval rituals. Anthropologists are almost universally agreed that these cave sanctuaries were created in part at least by men for men, and specifically for the ritual initiation of boys into the mysterious world of male responsibility and masculine spirituality. But ritual process for the making of men out of boys is not limited to our conjectures about these ancient caves. As many scholars have shown, most notable among them Mircea Eliade and Victor Turner, ritual initiatory process still survives in tribal cultures to this day, in Africa, South America, islands in the South Pacific, and many other places. It survived until recent times among the Plains Indians of North America. The study of ritual process by the specialist may tend toward dry reading, but we may see it enacted colorfully in a number of contemporary movies. Movies are like ancient folk tales and myths. They are stories we tell ourselves, about our lives and their meaning. In fact, initiatory process for both men and women is one of the great hidden themes of many of our movies. A good, explicit example of this can be found in the movie The Emerald Forest. Here, a white boy has been captured and raised by Brazilian Indians. One day, he's playing in the river with a beautiful girl. The chief has noticed his interest in the girl for some time. This awakening of sexual interest in the boy is a signal to the wise chief. He appears on the riverbank with his wife and some of the tribal elders and surprises Tommy at play with the girl. The chief booms out, "Tommy, your time has come to die." Everyone seems profoundly shaken. The chief's wife, playing the part of all women, of all mothers, asks, "Must he die?" The chief threateningly replies, "Yes." Then we see a firelit nighttime scene in which Tommy is seemingly tortured by the older men in the tribe. And forced into the forest vines, he is being eaten alive by jungle ants. He writhes in agony, his body mutilated in the jaws of the hungry ants. We fear the worst. Finally, the sun comes up, and Tommy, still breathing, is taken down to the river by the men and bathed, the clinging ants washed from his body. The chief then raises his voice and says, "The boy is dead, and the man is born." And with that, he is given his first spiritual experience, induced by a drug blown through a long pipe into his nose. He hallucinates, and in his hallucination discovers his animal soul, an eagle, and soars above the world in new and expanded consciousness, seeing, as if from a God's eye view, the totality of his jungle world. Then he is allowed to marry. Tommy is a man. And as he takes on a man's responsibilities and identity, he is moved first into the position of a brave in the tribe and then into the position of chief. It can be said that life's perhaps most fundamental dynamic is the attempt to move from a lower form of experience and consciousness to a higher or deeper level of consciousness, from a diffuse identity to a more consolidated and structured identity. All of human life at least attempts to move forward along these lines. We seek initiation into adulthood, into adult responsibilities and duties toward ourselves and others, into adult joys and adult rights, and into adult spirituality. Tribal societies had highly specific notions about adulthood, both masculine and feminine, and how to get to it. And they had ritual processes like the one in the Emerald Forest to enable their children to achieve what we could call calm, secure maturity. Our own culture has pseudo-rituals instead. There are many pseudo-initiations for men in our culture. Conscription into the military is one. The fantasy is that the humiliation and forced non-identity of boot camp will make a man out of you. The gangs of our major cities are another manifestation of pseudo-initiation, and so are the prison systems, which, in large measure, are run by gangs. We call these phenomena pseudo-events for two reasons. For one thing, with the possible exception of military initiation, these processes, though sometimes highly ritualized, especially within city gangs, more often than not, initiate the boy into a kind of masculinity that is skewed, stunted, and false. It is a patriarchal manhood, one that is abusive of others and often of self. Sometimes a ritual murder is required of the would-be initiate. Usually the abuse of drugs is involved in the gang culture. The boy may become an acting-out adolescent in these systems and achieve a level of development roughly parallel to the level expressed by the society as a whole in its boyish values, though in a contra-cultural form. These pseudo-initiations will not produce men. because real men are not wantonly violent or hostile. Boy psychology, which we'll look at in more detail in Chapter 3, is charged with the struggle for dominance of others in some form or another. And it is often caught up in the wounding of self as well as others. It is sadomasochistic. Man psychology is always the opposite. It is nurturing and generative, not wounding and destructive. In order for man psychology to come into being for any particular man, there needs to be a death. Death, symbolic, psychological, or spiritual, is always a vital part of any initiatory ritual. In psychological terms, the boy ego must die. The old ways of being and doing and thinking and feeling must ritually die before the new man can emerge. Pseudo-initiation, though placing some curbs on the boy ego, often amplifies the ego's striving for power and control in a new form. An adolescent form, regulated by other adolescents. Effective transformative initiation absolutely slays the ego and its desires in its old form to resurrect it with a new subordinate relationship to a previously unknown power or center. Submission to the power of the mature masculine energies always brings forth a new masculine personality that is marked by calm, compassion, clarity of vision, and generativity. A second factor makes most initiations in our culture pseudo-initiations. In most cases, there simply is not a contained ritual process. Ritual process is contained by two things. The first is sacred space, and the second is a ritual elder, a wise old man or a wise old woman who is completely trustworthy for the initiate and can lead the initiate through the process and deliver him or her intact and enhanced on the other side. Mircea Eliade researched the role of sacred space extensively. He concluded that space has been ritually hallowed. Space that has been ritually hallowed is essential to initiations of every kind. In tribal societies, this space can be a specially constructed hut or house in which the boys awaiting their initiation are held. It can be a cave, or it can be the vast wilderness into which the would-be initiate is driven in order to die or to find his manhood. The sacred space can be the magic circle of magicians, or, as in more advanced civilizations, it can be an inner room in the precincts of a great temple. This space must be sealed from the influence of the outside world, especially in the case of boys, from the influence of women. Often, the initiates are put through terrifying, emotional, and excruciatingly painful physical trials. They learn to submit to the pain of life, to the ritual elders, and to the masculine traditions and myths of the society. They are taught all the secret wisdom of men, and they are released from the sacred space only when they have successfully completed the ordeal and been reborn as men. The second essential ingredient for a successful initiatory process is the presence of a ritual elder. In the Emerald Forest, this is the chief and the other elders of the tribe. The ritual elder is the man who knows the secret wisdom, who knows the ways of the tribe and the closely guarded men's myths. He is the one who lives out of a vision of mature masculinity. With a scarcity in our culture of mature men, it goes without saying that ritual elders are in desperately short supply. Thus, pseudo-initiations remain skewed toward the reinforcement of boy psychology rather than allowing for the movement toward man psychology. Even if some sort of ritual process exists, and even if a kind of sacred space has been set up on the city streets or on the cell block. The crisis in mature masculinity is very much upon us. Lacking adequate models of mature men and lacking the societal cohesion and institutional structures for actualizing ritual process. It's every man for himself. And most of us fall by the wayside with no idea what it was that was the goal of our gender drive or what went wrong in our strivings. We just know we're anxious, on the verge of feeling impotent, helpless, frustrated, put down, unloved and unappreciated, often ashamed of being masculine. We just know that our creativity was attacked, that our initiative was met with hostility, that we were ignored, belittled, and left holding the empty bag of our lost self-esteem. We cave into a dog-eat-dog world, trying to keep our work and our relationships afloat, losing energy or missing the mark. Many of us seek the generative, affirming, and empowering father, though most of us don't know it. The father who, for most of us, never existed in our actual lives and won't appear, no matter how hard we try to make him appear. However, as students of human mythology and as Jungians, we believe there is good news. It's this good news for men, as well as women, that we want to share. And it is to this that we now turn. So that concludes Chapter 1. Thank you for listening. And next time, we'll read Chapter 2 on masculine potentials. And I'll likely have a short video that I'll add to this one that summarizes its main points and maybe talks about a few stories outside the Emerald Forest.